on Sky News.
This is Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. The Prime Minister has hit out at the Conservatives after revised figures revealed that net migration to the UK hit a record high in 2023. Sky News has revealed the Transport Secretary, Louise Hay, was convicted for an offence connected with misleading the police. Greg Wallace has stepped aside from presenting MasterChef over claims he made inappropriate sexual comments. Hello there, you're watching the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Liverpool Echo's political editor, Liam Thorpe, and the writer and broadcaster, Esther Kraku. Welcome both. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. While ahead of tomorrow's Commons debate on the new assisted dying bill, the Express carries an exclusive message to MPs from Dame Esther Rantzen, who is, of course, terminally ill. The headline, "Please allow us dignity of choice in our lives." The Guardian carries a last-minute appeal from the MP behind the bill for members to support it. While a poll conducted by the Eye says that the majority of the public are already in favour of assisted dying. The news revealed by Sky that Cabinet Minister Louise Hay has a criminal conviction in connection with misleading police over a missing mobile phone is the top story in the Mail. The allegations of inappropriate and sexualized behavior leveled against MasterChef host Greg Wallace are a lead story in tomorrow's Metro. His lawyers have told the BBC the claims are entirely false. The Telegraph describes the allegations as a fresh sex scandal for the BBC to deal with, on top of several other high-profile cases in recent years. Same lead in the Mirror. The headline there, bad taste. And the Star leads with comments on the story from rock music legend Sir Rod Stewart, labelling the presenter as a bald, fat bully. And the Sun too carries those comments by Sir Rod. And the shock increase in UK net migration leads the Times with a pledge by the Prime Minister to bring in tighter rules to stop the growing influx. And the Financial Times speaks to the head of the European Central Bank, Christine Lagarde, who says European leaders should cooperate with Donald Trump, buy more US goods, and avoid any possible trade war over tariffs. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code that you can see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Liam Thorpe and Esther Kraku. Thank you both so much for being with us. Let's start with the Daily Mail. It's the Louise Hay conviction. Look at the front page there. Revealed Cabinet Minister has fraud conviction. That's their headline. It's a Sky News exclusive, and we're saying that she's pled guilty in court to an offence connected with misleading the police. Liam.
Yeah, I heard this for the first time on Sky earlier. Quite a complicated story, it sounds like. And obviously in Louise Hay's statement, she has given her account of what happened and that it was a mix-up. She says that she was, mugged on a night out, which sounds like a terrifying experience, and what made a police complaint about a stolen phone, which she later realised wasn't actually missing. And where it was a work phone, and when the phone reappeared, the police got in touch. She says in her statement that she was advised by her lawyer not to say anything, and she regrets that now. And then eventually she pled guilty in court and accepted a discharge. It's a tricky one, and it's a complicated one, and it's obviously a headache for the Prime Minister and for Louise Hay. It happened a long time ago. I think what's important is that she had declared it to Keir Starmer. This is not news to him. He was aware of it, but it's obviously not a surprise to see the Conservatives, saying her position's untenable. I'm not quite sure that's the case. But let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that Louise Hay had run into a bit of trouble with the Prime Minister when she spoke out about P&O and was kind of publicly admonished for that. So it does leave her in a tricky position, and him as well. But she has got a pretty compelling explanation as well, I think.
I mean, I think the real controversy here is the fact that there have been, I think, 3 people that have come out and said that she actually used the case of, well, the report about her phone being stolen to get a newer upgraded model that apparently her colleagues were getting in terms of sort of this work phone. It's, again, this is a he said, she said sort of situation, and it's important that she did disclose it before she ran for parliament, so it's not like she hid this. I'm surprised by the Tories or, the opposition's outrage by this. I mean, I would think the biggest story is really Rachel Reeves' CV, which for some reason the Labour Party hasn't thought it's important enough to, clarify. This is the second most important person. She's managing the country's finances. She's not running a corner shop. And there being so many questions about, her work history and her CV and the impression that she gave to the public when she first ran to be an MP in Leeds, that I think is more pressing. This, because she did disclose it and she got the sort of lowest level charge she could possibly get, I don't really see how this is that much of a controversy. If this is the biggest scandal to do with her, she's basically a nun.
Can I just say one thing on that? There'll be some mayors of northern regions where I'm from who will be really hoping that she does stay on because she's got a very good relationship with them. She's doing a lot of work on bringing buses back under public control. So they'll be watching this carefully and hoping that she stays in position.
It'll be interesting to see the sort of further reaction that we get to these revelations. OK, let's go now to The Guardian front page and also The Eye, but let's start with The Guardian. Of course, it is the assisted dying bill, the vote tomorrow. Lots of people making their final appeals here. MP behind the assisted dying bill makes a final appeal before vote. Esther, I mean, a debate that has obviously split a lot of people, incredibly emotive, and people unavoidably bring their own life experience to this, don't they?
Of course. I mean, I think what I do find interesting about all the debate that we've had around assisted dying is the fact that the people that are most against it are groups that are representing disabled people and the elderly, because for them, they see this as an argument to improve palliative care. And I think there is sort of a moral argument about how this could be a slippery slope. You can say, someone expected to live for the next 6 months can potentially end their life prematurely. But that can easily, filter down to people that may feel like they're a burden in this country. We know that our care system is highly inadequate and is very poorly funded. And I just think this could be one step closer to something that we can no longer put the lid back on, and I do find it very concerning. I do like the fact that it is a free vote, so there are no contentions there with how MPs vote. But I do think it's important to remember the longer term impact of this and people that feel like they could potentially be seen as a burden on their family.
Liam, before coming to you, let me just pull up the front page of The Eye because it's the same story, slightly different angle on it. The Eye, UK public backs assisted dying as MPs vote on landmark bill. And we've seen this over the past few days. Around 2/3 of the public are actually for it. I mean, a lot of people are opposed to the principle. They just believe in the sanctity of life. There are others that we've heard from that actually are not opposed to the principle, but they just don't think the safeguards are here. And in other countries, who in fairness have different legislation from the one that's proposed, we have seen it slip a little bit. So
in Canada, for example. I mean, I'm not surprised by this poll at all. We've been out in Liverpool, where I work, and spoke to people on the street, and the vast majority are in favour, but they say in favour of the principle, as you say, kind of the idea of choice, the idea of that dignity. The proponents of this bill would say that provides that. Those against it say that the safeguards aren't there enough and that perhaps it's being rushed through. This hasn't been voted on since 2015, so there are people saying, well, it might not happen for another 10 years. But again, the argument there would be, well, that's not necessarily a reason to vote for it.
Because to improve the bill.
You could improve the bill, or as Esther says, look at some of the more wide-ranging issues around palliative care. One thing I've got to say is that, as someone who watches a lot of Parliament, I'm actually looking forward to seeing a debate where I don't know which way it's going to go. Because so often with our system, and it is a real frustration for me with the whipping system, I understand government has to get business done, but you go into a debate and you just know what's going to happen because the government of the day will win out and there might be a small rebellion, but I genuinely don't know which way this is going to go tomorrow, and it will be really interesting to hear. I think 150 MPs or something are going to speak, so there's going to be compelling arguments on all sides, and there's no one on either side of this is doing it for the wrong reasons. It's just what is the right result.
What's interesting is that I think at the start of the debate, I don't know, I certainly got the feeling, speaking to a lot of commentators, that it was likely to go through. Whereas now I think maybe that's, I mean, it's still likely to go through, but I think it's changed a little bit. Do you agree?
No, I completely agree. I mean, I find it interesting that actually the argument about the sanctity of life and the more religious, faith-based arguments is not what's really the most compelling thing for members of the public. I think for me, in the sense that I get, I mean, I wouldn't personally, even though, it's contrary to my own faith, I wouldn't personally make the religious argument because I don't think it applies to most of the country. I think the argument is this feels like the easy way out. We have so many problems with our care system, our palliative care system in this country, to speak of one of the facets of care in this country. It's just not good enough. And I think the idea of a sister dying, in my opinion, should be a last resort. It should be, I mean, there's literally no hope, and we've done everything we can. Well, clearly we haven't done everything we can. And the fact that a lot of sort of groups that represent the disabled and the elderly are the most opposed to this, I think is quite telling. Again, this is not something that has to take 10 years to come back into the public debate, but this is a very, in my opinion, shoddy bill, and I think it should go back and be revised. And, we shouldn't vote for this because Keir Starmer promised a TV presenter to bring it to the public.
I think it's really interesting that the two cabinet members that would have the most say over the implementation of this bill, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting and the Justice Secretary Shalom Mahmood, they have spoken out very clearly against it. So if it does go through tomorrow, what's their position? Do they resign? Is it a resigning issue? I suspect not. But they are suddenly having to implement something that they have been very clearly against. So I think Keir Starmer reportedly has been a bit frustrated by how outspoken his cabinet ministers have been. And it is a tricky issue for the government because it is a free vote. It has to be a free vote, but the cabinet is split.
It comes very early on in this government with a lot of MPs that are new to Parliament. They've only been there since the election. Do you think that makes a difference? I do think politically it's just the optics are not great. The newspapers have been shouting about the fact that many pensioners who need their winter fuel allowance will not be getting it. We could very well see horror stories of the elderly dying in their homes. What is to say that what will characterise Keir Starmer's premiership is that, if you can't afford fuel, your energy bills as an elderly person, you have the option of ending your life. I mean, these are the kinds of memes and tropes that could come from this. It's not politically a good look. And the fact that Keir Starmer said that he did put this forward because he promised a TV presenter that he would bring the debate to the Commons, again, that's not... what about the other 67 million people he's purported to represent? It's not a great look.
Also, a hell of a lot of pressure on the new intake of MPs because the Parliament looks completely different now and it's full of many new, inexperienced and quite young MPs. And I think you've seen from some of the reporting, it's been rankling with them. They've had to wrestle with this. This is the kind of enormous decision that you only make in Parliament every decade or so, in terms of our change to our social structures. And I think that's going to be really difficult for them, especially this early on in their careers.
Yeah, Mr. Stay with us. Coming up, the MasterChef presenter Greg Wallace is stepping aside during an investigation into allegations he made sexually inappropriate remarks to colleagues. We'll discuss that and what it means for the BBC and the media industry when we come back.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends.
We've got a heck of a race.
This is when the Premier League properly clicks into gear. With the reigning champions against perhaps their most likely challengers.
Liverpool, Manchester City,
The summit meeting of English football's top two.
Liverpool, Manchester City on USA.
Mayhem in the Middle East, rippling in America's West.
Get back! Get back!
The resolve of these protesters is now being seriously tested. I saw police being forced or pushing young men and women to the ground as they made almost 100 arrests.
None of this is a peaceful protest.
I'm Martha Kellner and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles. How are you feeling?
I am angry. It is an anti-woman agenda.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Will the cold affect your voters?
Well, we have a lot of tremendous support, but it's nasty out there.
Can you beat Donald Trump, Governor? President Biden, do you trust President Xi? President Biden says that this meeting went well. He said real progress was made on a whole host of issues. Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
There's no doubt that Kamala Harris and her team are harnessing the power of social media.
Do you think Kamala is brat?
Kamala's brat.
Are you scared?
Yeah, we were scared. It was terrible. Strong wind, building tearing down.
As them say, our God works, so we can't do nothing.
The people here know that worse storms may well be on their way. Free, wherever you get your news.
I've had severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
You want a job in a normal life?
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Liam Thorpe and Esther Kraku. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's go to the Financial Times. Story there on the front page. Arrivals jump, immigration beats record. And these are new numbers from the Office of National Statistics that have shown that net migration, so, you know, the sort of total sum of people leaving and coming, net migration has hit 906,000. Very strong words from the Prime Minister, from Keir Starmer. He said, he called it a one-nation experiment in open borders by the Conservatives. Esther.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that he held a press conference because it's clear that he wanted to get ahead of the story because this is not something that you want to see splashed. You know, Keir Starmer's premiership a few months in, 900,000, basically 1 million people net migration. I find it interesting that the Tories have even the audacity to exchange words with Keir Starmer on this because he's right. This is, you know, a complete lack of control or loss of control on the part of the Tories. However, he doesn't really inspire much confidence in terms of what he's going to do about it. I mean, he did scrap the Rwanda scheme, which was, you know, fraught with his own problems, but he hasn't really articulated how he's going to address that other than, you know, smashing the gangs, which is like a game of whack-a-mole. And there's no real
Although that's
plan
for
on
illegal migration.
Yeah, but I was just about to get, there's no plan on legal migration either. Yeah. So he hasn't articulated anything on that front. So again, this is just a PR move to get ahead of the story. But the question is, what is he going to do?
Well, one of the things he did mention, though, is that unprecedented numbers and that Britain's economy is now hopelessly reliant on migration. He mentioned that.
Yeah, I just wanted to pick up what you just said then because I think it's really important. So when you look at these numbers, and your reporter, the excellent Ed Conway made this point earlier, just a tiny fraction of that number is the small boats, people who come across on the small boats. And yet all of the attention and so much of the political rhetoric is about the people on the small boats, when actually the vast majority of these numbers, the vast majority is people coming to work and people coming to study. And yeah, our vital public services, social care, the NHS are now very reliant on people coming here. And the UK has not figured out how to work its economy after Brexit without people coming in to fill those vital roles.
Speaking of Brexit, Esther, very briefly, if you can, another thing that Keir Starmer said, Brexit was used for that purpose, to liberalise immigration. What do you make of that comment?
I think that's right. I mean, this happened under Boris Johnson. I mean, it was the complete U-turn of what the Tories had previously pledged to cut immigration down to the tens of thousands, particularly David Cameron. That was what Brexit was mainly based on, if you look at sort of how people and why people voted the way that they did, and Mr. Brexit, Boris, decided to completely ignore the mandate that he was given. So again, Keir Starmer is right. The question is, what is he going to do about it? I mean, just on the issue of the small boats, I think most people's frustration is just because of the issues of national security, as opposed to just, you know, them using the NHS. Although councils do pay a lot of money out to refugees, it's inconsequential in terms of in the wider scheme.
It's disproportionate, though, isn't it?
Exactly.
So,
in the widest, I think it's just the fact that many of these people, we don't actually know their origins, and so that creates national security fears. But the real issue really is legal immigration, and we don't know what Keir Starmer is planning on doing about it.
Okay, I think he said he's launching a white paper. He's going to start.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's tweaked around with sort of funding to do with not internships, apprenticeships and stuff like that, because there's a reliance on cheap foreign labour on that front. But that's tinkering around the edges.
Let's take a quick look at another story, front page of the Daily Telegraph. Greg Wallace, it says, steps aside after Telegraph reveals claims of inappropriate behaviour. And those are the allegations from, we have 13 people made against him, basically inappropriate behaviour and language, Liam.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Wallace is a fairly ubiquitous star at the BBC. He's been hosting the very popular MasterChef for 20 years. He's done various other documentaries and things like that. So it's another big issue for the BBC to deal with. We'll obviously have to see the investigation. I think it's obviously very interesting and pertinent that Kirsty Walk, the former Newsnight presenter, is one of the people to make the allegations. That's, it's going to need to be properly investigated.
Esther, we've got 20 seconds. We've got Rod Stewart there. Well, there he is, sort of. What do you make of
tubby
that?
But I mean, he doesn't look very tubby in that picture. So I don't know if that's a fair charge to level against him. But I would say that I don't know how much of an investigation can be done. These are about comments made over a decade ago. You can't really investigate comments unless they're physically written down. And I'm sure he's happy to retire at 60. He has more money than God, so. We'll see how this turns out.
Let's leave it. Esther Kraku, Liam Thorpe, thank you both so much. And now let's